Welcome to the Hamilton County Commission staff meeting, May 7th, 2024. We'll start with introductions on the dais.
Christy Rischel, Assistant Clerk.
Leslie Hervey, Clerk to the Board.
Stephanie Summerall Dumas, Commissioner.
Good afternoon. I'm County Commissioner Denise Driehaus.
Jeff Aludo, County Administrator.
Michael Friedman, Legal Counsel.
And I'm Hamilton County Commission President Alicia Reese. We're going to get straight to these, to a very important presentation, and we've got 2 executive sessions afterwards. I'd like to invite up a presentation on youth mental health from Interact for Health and BI3. We've got Jill Miller, President and CEO of BI3, and we've got Kate Schroeder, President and CEO of Interact for Health, and is Joshua Sims? Okay, coming up, it's kind of bad out there. I hope they have a very sturdy umbrella. And also Amaya Boyd, youth fellow. And who else is presenting with you? Are you, that's it? Okay. All right, well, come on up.
Well, thank you, Board of Commissioners, for inviting us here today to share more about the Regional Youth Mental Health Strategy. And I know many of you have heard about it, but I appreciate the time to be able to share where we are at today. So I think I have some PowerPoint slides to go with the presentation. So as you know, a mental health crisis we see across the country in every community. And as it relates to the county, up to 80% of youth in foster care have a mental health issue. So it's relevant to any youth that we look at across the county. We see a disconnect. Next slide, please. Oh, do I have it? All right, thank you. So this slide demonstrates that there seems to be a disconnect between parents and youth. So while 90% of parents report that their child's mental health is good or better, 39% of the youth are reporting that they feel anxious all of the time or most of the time. As you can see from these quotes, often youth feel like they don't have someone to talk to or to tell or can get access that they need. And you can see that the rates are increasing, particularly the death by suicide. You can see that Ohio's rate increased by 53% over an 8-year period. And when you disaggregate that data, you will find that Black youth and youth that belong to the LGBTQIA community are suffering most, and the rates are highest among those groups. And our behavioral health system is not meeting the increased need. And I strongly believe that the root cause of all of this is the lack of reimbursement, both by Medicaid. As you can see, Ohio rates the 6th lowest in terms of Medicaid reimbursement, and it's no better with commercial payers. So this leads to, obviously, our workforce issue. And when we don't have people and we can pay them according to what they deserve to make, then we have an access issue. And so the access, I can't imagine, I have 2 girls and one has suffered from depression and anxiety, and I cannot imagine that she is on a wait list of 1,300 kids waiting to get the help that she needs. And this is the reality for many of our kids in our Hamilton County community. But the good news is our region is coming together collectively to address this crisis. And our goal is to build a 10-year vision and strategy to improve youth mental health and well-being here in Hamilton County and throughout the region over the next 10 years. We would like to see a measurable difference made over this 10-year period. And we know sometimes it takes 10 years to tackle a wicked problem. And so we're driving focus, really centering youth and families, which I'm sure Kate Schroeder will talk more about briefly, really engaging with the youth and listening to them around what they need. And then amplifying their voices, as well as aligning the resources. So when we set out with this initiative, it was really looking at, okay, who is all working in this space, whether it's nonprofit communities, healthcare providers, who's all working here, where are the dollars going? So just an assessment of where we sit today. And now we're working on the strategy and plan. To kick this community effort off, we have 11 private funders at the table. And so you can see the list. But the reality is, to tackle a youth mental health crisis, the private dollars are not going to tackle this alone. And so we really hope to build public-private partnerships to achieve this 10-year vision for our youth. So just a brief recap for you. The first phase was the assessment, and I'm really proud of the fact that 60 youth and families and leaders from 115 organizations have contributed to this assessment. They met at least once a month and included cross-sector collaboration. The Mental Health Board was part of this. We've had conversations with Michael Patton and others. So we feel like there's something special here when you have these numbers of people showing up and wanting to do something about this crisis. And now we are in the development phase of the strategic plan, which we will develop strategies, policy priorities, and metrics. And as Kate will show in the next slide, we've built a collaborative structure to achieve this. So, Kate?
Thanks, Jill, and thanks to the commissioners and the county leadership for having us here today. Maybe just to build a little bit upon what Jill was sharing, why we're here talking about this. I think the trends that we're seeing in our community are no different than other communities across the country that are in a very reactive state to what are we going to do to address some of the trends that we are seeing in our youth. And I think we have an awareness here that we have an opportunity not just to respond, but to even be a national leader in this. And I know that seems bold and ambitious. We do have the #1 children's hospital. And as many of you may know, our children's hospital has more inpatient psych beds than any other inpatient hospital in the country. They have more than the entire state of California here. We have national leading expertise around youth mental health in Children's Hospital. We have an incredible community of behavioral health providers. We have leadership locally that is including with the county here in the Office of Youth, and your commitment to investing in youth, and in the philanthropy community. So I work at Interact for Health, Jill works at BI3. A year ago, when we were talking with other funders in our community about we want to do more in the youth mental health space, there were those 11 other funders besides the two of us that said, yeah, we want to do something too. And rather than all of us just doing our own thing, there was a desire to come together as a community and say, let's do something big as a region in Cincinnati and as a county in Hamilton County. And so that was really the genesis of this and why we've gone through this 6-month assessment phase, because we want to get on the same page around what is the problem here, what's driving these trends, so that we can come together as a community and really focus on them. And the phase that we're in now that we had the assessment that completed in January, it's so what? What can we do to really meaningfully impact these trends? And how do we make sure that we're centering youth and families in this? That it's not a bunch, the adults, folks many of us bring different expertise, but if we're trying to really respond to the needs of youth, we want to be centering their voice in this. So there were over 60 focus groups with youth and families that led to the assessment, and now we have a youth fellowship, 25 youth fellows that are helping to lead in the strategy development. So if we go to the next slide here. And one of the, I would say, challenges and opportunities is how many groups have become involved. So we had 13 funders that came together and said, let's underwrite a process, invite all the partners in the community that are interested in being part of this. We've had 115 organizations, including many from the county. JFS and the Mental Health Board have been very involved, which has been tremendous. And everyone keeps coming to these monthly meetings. And I know we all have too many meetings on our schedule, but it's just a testament to the commitment here and the opportunity that we have to make a difference. And so there's a steering committee that's formed with 25 representatives. There's a backbone support. This is not owned by Interact or BI3 or any donor. It is an independent. We're in the process of hiring independent director to lead this. Youth fellows are a group of 25 youth fellows are really at the helm in terms of advising and deciding what the most effective strategies will be. And then we have work groups in some of the focus areas that came out of the assessment. So 6 months of assessment, I'm not going to go through in detail, but I do want to talk about what were some of the key highlights. One of the big things, number one message, youth said, we don't feel heard. We don't have a sense of belonging, connection. Many of us don't feel safe. And where a lot of us were aware of some of the challenges with access to treatment, what came out of listening to the youth was we need to do a lot more in the prevention space and in creating safe spaces, and also working with adults to better connect and listen and understand and know how to support youth. And so that is, when we break this out here in the community conditions, it's how are we working with schools to ensure safe environments? How are we in our community ensuring safe people and safe places? And really I have 2 children myself, and all of those, whether it's schools, sports, churches, libraries, rec centers, how are we working with all of the adults that are interacting with youth to know how to best support the youth in our community? And then the treatment side, access to care, quality of care, and provider retention and recruitment really came out as strong ones. This goes into a little more detail around what we heard from youth around the challenges that need to be addressed in each of these spaces. So in the community conditions, schools, academic pressure is felt very strongly by our youth. And one of the key indicators has always been, do you have a trusted adult in your life? It can be a teacher, it can be another family member, but that is something that we've seen on the decline, both in our community and in communities nationally, is the number of youth that respond they have access to a trusted adult. Bullying and racial bias also came up quite a bit when listening to the youth and around the school environment. And as I mentioned earlier, connection, feeling a sense of loneliness, not having a sense of belonging, came up quite a bit, and just not enough sufficient safe spaces. Many of us grew up, I'm in my mid-40s, grew up going to malls and other places that are not as accessible to youth right now. And so this came out quite a bit, and not having access to safe spaces. And with caregivers, adverse childhood experiences, lack of awareness, many youth will say, my parent isn't dealing with their own mental health challenges, and therefore they're not in a position, they don't even believe that I have these challenges. So stigma still continues. And the access to care, Jill touched on this a bit, reimbursement rates, inadequate reimbursement rates. As many of you may know, cost of care, insurance does not cover the cost of care. It has to be subsidized. This is a major problem. This is more of a state policy issue, but it undercuts all the services that we're trying to provide here. And that many of our youth, especially those involved with JFS, it is difficult to access services because retention, everything is undermined by the lack of adequate reimbursement. And it impacts care quality. There's a lot of youth are very frustrated having to tell their story again and again every time they enter a new point of service. And our provider workforce, the average tenure is 1 to 2 years. And so that really undermines the quality as well when you are having to tell your story again and remake that connection with a therapist. So now this is the most interesting and exciting part. I mentioned that we have youth fellows. So guiding value and principle throughout all of this was let's listen and be guided, not just in an advisory role, but in a decision-making role around our youth fellows. And so we opened up, at first it was going to be just 15. We got 150 applicants. And Commissioner Reese, I know you recently had the jobs opportunity for youth, and we saw that same with this opportunity, just this outpouring of youth who want to be involved, who want to work. These are paid positions. It is $20 a month, or $20 an hour for, $20 an hour.
I was about to say, wait a minute.
Yeah, you should run me out of here. That was what we were doing. $20 an hour for 20 hours a month. And they're meeting once a week. It is ages 14 to 23. You can see some of the demographics here. We were supposed to have 2 of our youth here. I think one is coming on his way, so we'll wait for you.
Yeah, here he is. Chip Gerhardt.
Young at heart. Mr. Gephardt is very young at heart. But our youth fellows, we had an outpouring of interest. So rather than staying with the 15 that we originally created, we went back to the funders and said, let's have at least 25. It's a 6-month fellowship, and something that we plan to continue throughout this is really having youth actively engaged in leading this. And they have been, holding as the adults that are involved, holding us accountable to where we need and how we need to be showing up in this. So Amaya and Yashua were going to be here today. Amaya's car unfortunately was towed, and so she is she was helping a friend move, and so she's unable to be here, but Yashua will be here if he gets through the torrential downpour. So while we wait on that, I'll just take you through a couple more detail on some of the strategies that are emerging, because this is where I get excited. It's like, enough, we know there are challenges, but what can we do about it? And so the youth in the communities and caregiver space have been so clear that safe spaces and safe people. And how do we really get clear on what are safe spaces? Where do they exist now? How can we create more of them? And how do we create more safe people who are understanding and non-judgmental, and really train more adults in our community to be that trusted, welcoming adult that is in a good place to support our youth? And the caregivers understand mental wellness and are empowered to help. One of the other insights that came out is, and why you'll see in the title of this, it's not about mental illness, it is about mental well-being. We're not just striving to have the absence of mental illness, we are striving to create thriving youth in our community. And that's really a mindset shift in a lot of this. And working with our school districts around fostering belonging and connection, and those adults and youth in schools, building mental well-being skills. Again, you'll see that's the well-being. Yay! Great. Awesome. And then in the treatment space, making sure it is more accessible and integrated. And let's go back to Joshua. Come on up here. And thank you for enduring the crazy weather. Yashua's one of the youth fellows, as I mentioned, and he can maybe just introduce himself and share a little bit about his experiences with this and why it matters.
Hello, thank you all for waiting for me. The weather was quite something to trudge through.
We're impressed.
Thank you.
Got here.
I was in the car and I was like, I don't know, I'm all the way here. Water liquor, kind of aggressive. My name is Joshua Sims. As they said, I am a tutor with the Literacy Lab as a Leading Man Fellow, as well as my internship that I have here with the Youth at the Center. The reason that I wanted to work at the Youth at the Center was because as an educator, and especially as an educator of color, I understand that there's a mental health needs to be destigmatized amongst youth. And I understand that as an educator. So understanding that I need to take the steps to make sure my students are thriving in every possible outcome is my end goal.
Awesome.
Do you guys have any questions about how I'm doing so far or anything about the Youth at the Fellows?
Yeah, we probably will have some questions at the end of the presentation if you could stick around.
Anytime, I don't mind.
Give you a chance to dry off.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
So you can see that our youth fellows bring a lot of just energy and perspective to this, and it's, I think it's been a good reminder. They're even coming when some of the steering committee and other meetings are taking place, and really being present and helping to influence the conversations in those. We had a good one a couple weeks ago when we were talking about creating the safe spaces, and one of our youth said, it isn't just a physical space. It oftentimes was a youth who'd been in the foster care system for many years here, and who said, had a mentor through Found Village that really was transformative in her life, and it was that person that worked with her that made her feel safe and that was really transformative. So that changed, that one focus on not just safe spaces, but safe people and safe spaces. And this is the last slide here, and really just want to open this up to discussion. But part of the reason we're here today, it's not with a specific ask. It is really more to make all the commissioners aware. I know many of you have touched this in some way, but aware of the work that's going on. We see this as a great opportunity for public-private partnership We are so grateful to Lenora and to Michael for being part of this, and their teams have been part of this, so that as solutions are coming out of this, one of the special populations, there's awareness that there are services we need to strengthen for everyone. And then there are also communities that need even additional support and services. So those involved with JFS, those involved in our court systems, how do we really wrap our arms around those families and youth? I would say that's another key theme, is it's not just the youth, it is the families that need support as well. And so that is, we're so grateful for their participation in this, because it really is, how can we identify activities that are aligned and mutually supportive of each other's efforts. And then there will be a launch of this when we have the strategy. So we will plan to come back once there are specific recommendations coming out of the strategy that's launched in July, and would love to talk in more specifics about any identified partnership opportunities coming from that.
Great, thank you very much. Before I open it up for questions, I wanted to offer our Hamilton County Mental Health CEO, Lenore Godfrey, if you wanted to say anything to add to it.
Thank you. As you can hear, as you heard, 115 or 100, I think it was 15 organizations that were brought together. That was a feat in itself. They came with the same need. And so it was wonderful that Jill and Kate were able to pull that together. We are here to be a support. Of course, in the space that we are in, we work with kids, families, adults, and with mental health and alcohol and drug issues. And so clearly, when there's such an effort, we have to be at the table. So we are ready and available. There's still space for us to do what we do in our normal business. We're in schools. We have partnerships with JFS, as we talked about the last time we were here. And so there's just room and space for us to be a part of this. And we look forward to getting into a public-private relationship where we can then serve the abundance of kids that we serve, as well as reach those that we have not yet served.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I'm like Director Michael Patton. There's a lot of mention about the foster care system and the need. So I want to give you an opportunity if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, so I'm just excited to be a part of this process. When we learned about the initiative and the effort that BI3 and Interact were involved in, that brought so many different partners together, knowing that we need the kind of help and support around us to really help us deliver the services to the children that are in our care, and just mental health in general. You saw from the slide that this problem is growing. And so I think we are uniquely positioned to be understand what the need is from the children that we have in our care. Access issues, as you see, are in the general population. They're also affecting the children that we have in our care. And so I really want to commend them for the work that they're doing, engaging the youth, hearing directly from people who can benefit from additional access. And my hope is in the long term, we can have some really impactful programming and support around whatever this group comes up with that we believe will address the issue of an increase in mental health challenges for our community, particularly for our youth. So we've been a part of it. Happy to hear more about the specific strategies that they will come up with, and then have more detailed conversations about how we might partner with them in that endeavor. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. It's definitely something that is a major concern of our county, of our board. We have put extra dollars, I think more than any county board has done, because we had ARPA money. We really focused a lot on teen suicide prevention. And we've been able to, because of ARPA money, put money toward that. We also put a levy on, and we didn't take that lightly. That was, I believe, the only increase that we have done with mental health. And those dollars have come in now, and the goal was to be able to do a lot more. My question, I love the collaboration because I don't like the duplication. My question is, what does an ROI model look like? What would be that? Because I love the part that getting everybody in the room, getting all the monies that's out there on the table, where it's coming from. But then what does it look like for mental health or mental wellness? What does that look like? Because some of these dollars we have are one-time dollars, ARPA. What does it look like for a success model? Sometimes we fund things. I remember when I first got elected, I met with some people, and we were funding things, and their job is to end something. It's always say end something. And I said, well, man, you've been in business for 40 years. I mean, shouldn't your goal be to go out of business? You're supposed to be ending something. What would be the model we look at and say we made a difference? How do we measure that, I guess? I guess that's the hard part.
No, it's such a good question, because I think it's something we talk a lot about. And maybe just to start with a story, because I think it's a good example of what our current challenges are. One of these sessions, I was talking with a social worker and a teacher from the same school, and they were sharing, they had a 13-year-old that was in the classroom whose parents suffered from substance use, and they knew this child, this youth, needed support. But because he didn't have a mental health diagnosis, no supports were available to him. The therapist couldn't meet with him. You have to have a diagnosis to be funded to meet with these students. And all the other supports were contingent on having a diagnosis, and he didn't. But he then developed a substance use habit himself, and then he began stealing to support his habit. And he is now in the Justice Center and receiving all the services and thriving. Juvenile Justice Center. And that is an ROI, is avoiding that, right? How can we invest more upfront to reduce the needs down the road? And I think we have a lot of indicators now around some of the success metrics are looking at decreases at the highest level. And that's why we went to 10 years, because these are long-term investments, not just in youth, but in families and in our systems that provide more accessible and comprehensive, high-quality support. But we want decreases in the suicide rate and in levels of feeling anxious all of the time. But we also want increases, and there isn't a metric for this, but this, I think, maybe something that comes out of this. Let's track connection and belonging in our community. Let's track a sense of hope. We could be leading in the nation if we at a large scale start to measure some of these wellness and connection and belonging indicators. We do have indicators and want to see a decrease around sense of loneliness. You want to see an increase in I have a trusted adult in my life. Substance use, you'd want to see decreases in those as well, because we know that often those that are struggling are self-medicating through substance. So the ROI would be around the movement in these indicators, and part of the strategy will identify a small subset that we as a community are tracking, some of which we have, and some may be newer indicators around connection and belonging.
Gotcha. No, I think that's good. For me, I would love to see everything that we have in Hamilton County. You've been doing these meetings, but it would help me to see here is everything in Hamilton County mental health. And then here's funding that we have, whether it's levy dollars, private dollars, nonprofit dollars, ARPA dollars, so I could get a good, clear picture. And then here's what we're offering. Here's the things that you look up and might say, well, we put this in treatment, but we don't have this in prevention. It's just hard for me to see it, and it won't be just for me, but like we could put it on our website under the category of mental health. So if someone in Hamilton County, a resident, they want to understand it, a parent, a child becoming a teenager and a parent saying that teenager is not talking to me anymore, I'm concerned, just to kind of, and then for us, so people don't say, hey, you guys ain't done nothing on mental health. So I could get a picture that we need, this is what we need, here's where are some deficiency areas, but here's everybody, which is what you guys have kind of put together, but something that we can have kind of as, here is the starting point, here's what Hamilton County has invested or is investing in health, here's the areas that we're investing in mental health, and of course, we still got more to do. So if I'm a person and I voted for that levy, and and it was said to me that, I support trying to reduce the mental health or provide more funding for more people. I can see on the chart, like, when I was paying, this in the levy, I was only helping, I just threw out a number, 50,000 people. Now, because I did this, I see now, we're now able to try to help 100,000, but we still got more to go. But now I feel like here's where my investment is going, here's all the different entities, or if I'm concerned about teen prevention of suicide, here's what it is, and here's where we're going, and here's where we need to go. And that, to me, helps us when we put together the new model, what have you, we can say, here's where we started, here's where we're going. And then you can kind of see that we've leveraged the dollars, we've stretched the dollars, or what have you. Because right now, how I feel is that I've got all this going, but I'm still seeing people with issues. I don't know exactly how to help them or get them to the right place. I hear moms anxious about my kids in school, and now they're not talking to me anymore, and should I be concerned? Where do I go? And I know many of you have different websites. You can go here, you can go there, you can go here. But I just think as a county, we've made a decision to invest in this from the taxpayers, from the nonprofits, from the corporate. Everybody said we're going to invest in it. Like you said, how do we then tackle it? And for me, it's like, where are we?
Yes.
Then that's how we tackle it.
Yes. No, thank you. This is something that came out so loud and clear in the conversations with all the stakeholders involved in this, is that it's two things. One, let's make it clear what are the services that are currently available, by whom, and what resources are supporting that. And then what are the gaps, and where are we going, and what are the gaps? And so I think that is very much the goal of this, is to, in the areas identified as where we want improvements, let's map out what funding is currently going towards and what more is needed and who can help fill those gaps. I think the other piece of what you're saying, we also heard loud and clear. And I think, this is a room of a lot of folks who are pretty involved, but I bet many of us probably know a youth in our lives that is struggling and would all have different answers on what are the best supports that we can offer them. And that's a challenge. Let's get clear on what some of those best supports and services that we want to offer as a county, as a community, and make that clear. Make it clear on your website, make it clear on our website, so that we're not all sending people in different directions. And I think that is very much a sentiment that has come through loud and clear in this.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, I'm gonna open it up. Did you want to say something?
I want to.
You on the edge of your seat. I'm like, she wants to say something.
You're speaking my language, and what I would say is an asset map is something that has been mentioned since the beginning of this. And just to share, we wanted it to be big and broad as a regional effort. But BI3, as you know, invests a majority of our dollars into Hamilton County. And so we are very interested now that we have the regional strategy that's being developed. Okay, let's look at Hamilton County. And to your point, let's see who's all working in this space and where the dollars are flowing and where are the gaps. So love to come back to you with an answer on that.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I'll open it up, Vice President Driehaus.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Kate, for the presentation. Thank you, Joshua, for being here as well. Glad you made it. So just a couple of things off the top. I love the idea of the youth fellowships. We, with the Commission on Women and Girls that we're all familiar with, the beauty of a commission like that is the young people that participate, because they have the insights related to the issue, any issue that we're talking about, particularly mental health. And we've got a whole committee that is dealing with mental health from the very beginning, because that's what they identified as a concern. And this was pre-COVID. So it's an ongoing thing. I'm delighted that you're taking a really collective, broad, systematic approach to this. I think that's what's needed in order to address some of the serious issues that youth are facing. So, but I think the youth component of this is critically important. So I applaud you for investing in that component of the work that you're doing. Also, this language about health as opposed to sickness, I think is really important for us to get our minds around. It's, we've got a healthcare system, but really it's a sick care system. We only see people when they're sick. It's not about health. And this initiative sounds like it's more proactive than waiting for someone to have a crisis or engage in some kind of traumatic event where they need help, but rather make sure that that doesn't actually happen. So I'm very interested in that approach and kind of taking a more healthy look really at youth mental health. A couple things that you mentioned, and I do want to mention that the Commission on Women and Girls, and Jill, you're more familiar than most with that because you were on the Commission on Women and Girls. You talked about the Medicaid reimbursement issue. It's a huge issue. So one of the recommendations this year was about the county commissioners offering a resolution to the state. As you say, it's a state issue, but a resolution to the state to lobby for or promote access to coverage for mental health issues when it comes to Medicaid. So we're on track with that one. And the other one was the youth wellness days that we did, was it last year? Last year in the schools for kids to participate in wellness days, all intended to not only provide access but reduce stigma in the schools. And that's a good way to start to get kids to think about mental health in a way that's not stigmatized, but rather something that everybody is open and available to talk about. And then we also had a recommendation about involving youth on our different boards and commissions, which I hope that we'll advance that after the administrator brings back his analysis of those recommendations. So a lot of positive progress on that. But I was curious, Kate, you talked about not only safe places, but safe people. Could you, I wonder if that becomes something that is a recommendation that comes from this group, what is your vision for how we would enact something like that? Is it a broad community push for mentors, or what would be the thinking behind that? I don't know if you're prepared to answer that because maybe it won't be a recommendation, but it sounds like it might be.
I believe that you need one person in your life, right, that cares about you and can push you and support you. So one thing that we're proud of is we have developed these work groups, and it is their tasked with identifying problems such as these and coming up with solutions. So it's a great question. And Kate, I don't know if you have specifics you want to elaborate on, but I think there's tremendous possibilities to explore what that does look like. So not just creating safe spaces, but making sure that youth have access to at least one person in their life where they feel like they can go to and talk to.
Yeah, I think research has proven this out, that kids are more successful when they have that one individual in their life. I'm just wondering, is that a community effort to match kids to an adult for a certain period of time where they would have access to that adult in a mentoring kind of relationship? Maybe you're not there yet because, Yashua's coming up. I was going to call on you next, but anyway, I'm glad you're approaching. But I'm just wondering, as you hear that, right, as the committees come up with these different ideas, and you're an educator, so you might have a significant insight on this. But what are you thinking as to what that might play out to be?
So in the aspect of, do you just need one person or one mentor in your life, is something that we've had a chance to speak about a lot at the Youth at the Center. Just from the first times we came in, they were asking us youth, what do we want? What do we want to see in our community? So a lot of people are saying, we want more space, we want more freedom, and we want to be heard. So that means that one mentor, that one person in your life that's providing you with some amount of support for something. So another thing that we thought we threw up I believe was just yesterday. Was yesterday Monday? Yes, it was. Okay, yeah. Last night at our meeting, we had a chance to speak about what that looks like. We were saying more safe spaces after school hours. So like including to like 7 at the latest, just something that would allow youth a way to step away, a safe space where they can do that with other people who are with their best interests in mind.
Where do you teach? Are you a teacher?
So I'm a literacy tutor at the Leading Men Fellowship. They take young men between the ages of 18 and 24 and place them in classrooms doing literacy activities. So I'm in the classroom. I work at William Mallory Early Learning Center at Cincinnati State. Just in there every day with my preschool classroom doing literacy activities, write their names, sing songs. Less songs recently, haven't really been feeling it, but just kidding. But just keeping up with the children, they're fun. Getting a chance to enjoy them and work every day. I work with them on that behavioral management part, just getting a chance to express our emotions, how we feel, and just understand that we are all people. We all have emotions that we need to express. So understanding that as an educator and as a youth is important. And I cannot wait to take that and destigmatize mental health with youth so they understand that it's an important issue that must be talked about.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the insight. And one last question, Kate, I think this one's for you. So we talked about the dollars that will follow, hopefully, when recommendations come forward. I don't have any sense, and maybe you don't either, of what that even looks like, depending on the recommendations, right? I don't think it would be fair to ask you what the amount would be, because I don't think anybody knows that yet because the recommendations aren't in front of you. But when you think about funding partners in this, as Commissioner Reese said, we've got levies. We've got the mental health levy, but we also have the children's services levy. And so because this is so youth-oriented, I'm hopeful that with Michael sitting at the table and Lenora sitting at the table, that there might be some intersection related to the work that's going on in JFS, particularly through the levy initiatives and the work of the Tax Levy Review Committee. I mean, they're doing a mid-cycle review right now related to the children's services levies. So I wonder if you've thought through any of that, and as you look at as you say, the public-private partnership related to an ongoing effort. So when you come back with recommendations, I'm hopeful that we can have that conversation as well.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. That's an excellent point, and I think we are very much, the timing makes a ton of sense with the Children's Services Tax Levy Review Committee. So that was one of our next steps that we were thinking, with your permission and guidance, it would make sense to sit down with them to share what we're hearing, understand what they're seeing as well, and really identify any potential opportunities for alignment that are coming out of that. We do not have a budget on this yet. I think it will depend on what strategies come out in the asset mapping that we talked about in terms of where is funding now. I mean, the 13 funders that have come together to underwrite the development of this are committed to supporting the initiatives going forward. And we have a few million that are intended commitments towards that, but once we have specific initiatives. And I could see something about scale up of safe spaces, or as you were talking about safe people, a lot of that could be training, trauma-informed training, other training, working with employers to do this within their businesses that wouldn't necessarily need public funding or philanthropy funding, but could be used through private sector themselves in funding these initiatives. But then if we are working with some of our county government staff in county services that are youth-facing, there could be opportunity to really enhance training there. And through the philanthropy, through the foundations that are part of this, to even bring that to broader scale. So I think that's where we see some of the opportunities, and that when we come back, it will have estimated amounts to go, as President Reese was saying, from here to here, what will it take? And who are potential options that could cover that gap?
I just like the idea that you're doing it a little differently. You're doing it broadly, you're doing collective work, you're involving youth. I mean, it does seem like the right approach to try to figure some of this out. So
it takes time. I think we're eager to get to the action phase, but it's really, I think, to really put youth at truly in leading and guiding this. They're, as Joshua may tell you, they're like, who are these adults? And like, do we really trust them?
Do we need them in the room?
I think there's a lot of healthy skepticism about. And so it takes time to build trust and really listen and get to those suggestions that make the most sense for our community, that are feasible and impactful. So
Well, and I also appreciate you coming in now before the recommendations are even available to bring us in the loop related to the process. And so I really do appreciate kind of the heads up really that you're giving us right here. So thank you.
yes, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dumas.
Okay, thank you everyone for all your comments and the report. I have several things to comment about. I was looking at your report. It says 91% of parents believe that the mental health of their child is good, very good, and excellent. It's not surprising to me. That's been like that forever and a day. And parents think if they admit that there is a mental health issue, it reflects on them. And everything is good. So we have to educate our parents. It goes back to what you guys were saying about a safe place. Yeah, we can get mentors. That's good. But where can they go relative or at home to get the nurturance that they need? I remember seeing a thing on the news here where all the young people that were downtown, not everyone, but a lot of them said they're downtown because they don't feel safe at home. Now that's a problem. What do we do about it? And we need to, I even thought about, I wrote so many notes, I can't read them, so, but there'll be a marketing campaign for the parents and let them know you're not at fault. You don't know everything you should do, how to identify mental health issues, and it may in some way be reflective on you historically or genetically or whatever, but that we take the time to let them know it's okay not to know. When we talk about, I have a White House briefing that I, on a webinar every Thursday, and I remember telling Councilwoman Albee, she's interested in the mental health component, that there is money available for mental health. And the Biden administration has recognized the issue that's growing. And they were saying money is being left on the table, specifically for public schools. The school system is not asking for the money, or they don't know about the money. But there is money available federally. May take a little more hoops to jump through, but there's money available through that area. And I thought about the youth. How can we do this without the youth? I mean, the youth are tired of us telling them as adults what they need to do. And so it's just so great that component that you have in there. You can't do it and do it right without them. Let's see. I was a little surprised on one of the statistics. The average tenure of behavioral health providers is 1 to 2 years. And so, we stayed for 25, 30 years, you know, and so I had 47 years myself. But here's the thing, the children have changed, the times have changed, the economic forecast is different. You know, children are not, young people are not as hopeful for their future, for all this stuff going on. So how do we increase the time that people that are doing this hard job want to stay? What do we, so evaluating how we can get them to stay a little longer. And I was wondering about your groups that you have. Is there a specific group for like resources that are out there? Joshua? I'm asking you. Any of your young groups deal with resources and how to tap into them?
So I believe we have 3 resource groups, if I'm correct. We have our schools, communities, and we have our caregivers group.
Okay, and so when you say you have 3 groups, so you reach out, you do internet searching to see. Go ahead.
I apologize to cut you off. So far, when working as a youth, we've been just providing feedback more so. Okay. We've been gradually, getting the chance to, like she said earlier, get to know each other more, open up. Okay. Moving from there, we've had a chance to kind of merge more of those groups more recently and get to understand as youth what are the things that we are here to tackle, So we haven't really got a chance to dive into that, if I can say, but we're working on it.
Very good. And then as you look at resource/research, there are a lot of grants out there, and I don't know if you have a grant committee with youth. Do you have that? No? Okay. You might want to consider it but you guys are just awesome. It's great to hear from all of you, and I'm really encouraged by what you're doing. So.
If I may respond to
Sure.
a few things. One is that the kids themselves have named this initiative. And so they have named it HEY, and that stands for Healthy Empowered Youth. And what they really loved about it is it's attention getting. So, hey, Cincinnati, hey, Northern Kentucky, hey, parents. So it will be HEY, which is Healthy Empowered Youth. They came up with the design, the name. So again, just putting their voices at the center and really leaning into them on how to do this. The secondly is workforce is a huge issue. And it does come down to significantly to the lack of reimbursement. I can tell you with our affiliation with TriHealth, we lose money on every patient we provide behavioral health and mental health services to, because both Medicaid, Medicare, and commercial providers are not even reimbursing our organizations, both healthcare systems and community nonprofits, to be whole. So, and so that's challenging because you have to try to pull the resources from other places. And when you can't pay people what they deserve to make, we lose them. And so with the lack of reimbursement, say in the healthcare system, pay is at a minimum, where the demand is so great, you have people leaving hospitals and nonprofit organizations going into private practice and making 3 times as much. But then that doesn't help with our disparities and our gaps for parents who can't afford to pay for private practice. And so the turnover is high, the need is great, but we can't draw young people to the field if they're going to pay for college and then make a living that they can't even pay their tuition back. So all of this stems to a lack of reimbursement.
Well, I'm just thinking, when you say 1 to 2 years for tenure, most of the people that get into this initially, they have a heart for it. They have a passion for it. So I'm wondering, and it sounds like you've surveyed some of the ones that have left. And I think it's really because for children, inconsistency just really makes them unstable. We know that. And so maybe to possibly get the other funds, the grants, the federal funds, the state funds, and then also look at, like I think Mr. Patton did, what incentives for staff and all that. Some of it is reimbursement, but we don't have to do it all with reimbursement.
Right. There's a burnout issue too.
Sure.
And so it's surrounding the workforce with the supports they need to keep themselves mentally healthy and well. We gave a grant to, a significant grant to Best Point to literally support their staff, to stabilize their staff, to be able to give incentives and bonuses that they so well deserved to keep their staff stable when they have a wait list of 1,200 kids. So I think there's a lot you can do around burnout as well, to your point.
Absolutely. Okay. And I wanted to ask BI3. Let me know what that's.
Yeah, so BI3 is a grant-making initiative to transform health. And so it is started by Bethesda Inc., so it literally is a fund focused on health initiatives and health equity. We've really put the stake in the ground around health equity. Grant maker in health is a simple word to say.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you. Keep going forward and conquer, for sure. Yeah.
Mr. Aludo?
And I'm not sure, Jill, whether this question is for you or for Kate, but so as you guys have gotten into this now, I'm just focused specifically on the 3 key areas. So the community caregiver schools, treatment, and so as an administrator, program manager, and I can look at this and see some real, just without even being an expert, can see some clear pathways for programs in the safe space area, school prevention type of thing. When you start talking about integration of care, and you talk to a high school athlete who might hurt a ligament in his knee, that person can probably tell you, I know exactly what the pathway is. Got to get it stabilized. I'm going to have surgery. I'm going to go through rehab, et cetera. talk to a parent or a kid who's in the mental health system, and they have no idea what is going on, what the next step is, et cetera. And I'm not even certain that folks in the emergency and primary care fields know either, or know much more than that. So my question really is, so as you start to look at these, especially in that area on the treatment and the integration of care, are you at the stage of this yet where you can look at this and think, it may be a difficult one to challenge or to tackle, but we see a pathway here? Because again, some of the things, safe spaces, school prevention programs, easy to outline a pathway. I say easy, relatively, right? But for something like that, are you at the point where you can look at this and say, there's some best practices we've seen through the conversations we've had. There are some low-hanging fruit improvements that we see that can be made in the local system. Are you far enough along in that, or is that a conversation that still has to happen?
We're still having those conversations with the workforce. Kate, I don't know if you heard anything specific from them yet.
Speak a little bit about the pink network work.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Let's sit up here. I think it's a great point. I think that some of the integration is around when individuals are showing up for their primary care appointments or their sports physical. Are we doing a screening around mental health the same way we are screening for other things? And Cincinnati Children's is partnering with 10 local providers to be able to start that integration. We're one of the, I'd say, leading cities in the country around starting to pilot some of those best practices and create a learning network. And how do you integrate it into primary care? I think there's other opportunities in our schools as well around more consistent asking and screening, because we're tending to not identify issues until they're much further down the road.
Right. No, that's great. I'm just glad to see that has started. I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, the integrated of behavioral health into primary care is key. So we give a large grant to TriHealth. So if your kids go to pediatrics at TriHealth, they now have access to a behavioral health consultant. So I think that's critically important that we marry the two, because for far too long we've separated the body from the mind, and our bodies don't work like that.
Yeah. Great. No, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Yes, Vice President.
You've talked a lot about schools. Have you done a similar presentation to the school board, or what's been the interaction with not only CPS, but we've got a lot of school districts in the county. So what's going on with the schools?
So I haven't had any direct contact with the schools yet. I know that CPS is aware of this initiative. We haven't had in-depth conversations, to my knowledge. Have we?
They've been part of it. Their head of school positive culture has been part of the regular monthly meetings, and a few of the other school districts have. I think we are leaning on the schools group to come back and lead, like, what is the best way to interact and reach out to all the schools at scale? Because we're a little sensitive to just presenting to only CPS, and so want to have kind of a plan of approach more broadly.
So the Educational Service Center might be a better place to go, because CPS is part of it, as are all the other school districts. And so if you were to present there, whether it's the curriculum group or to the larger superintendent group, that might be a better way to access more broadly.
It's a great suggestion.
I mean, we do know that the governor is very committed to children and families. And so, and that he has really pushed for pushing dollars down to the schools to be used for mental health and wellness. The challenge is accountability. And I think it goes back to what you said, Commissioner Reese, is you can throw money at things, but how do you know it's really making a difference? And we can set this strategy up to be as successful as we can, but unless we're then gonna hold people accountable to the results that we all seek as a community, it's gonna fall flat. So I think it's one thing to set these things up. And the challenge with this crisis is we can't just throw programs at it. We are not going to program our way out of this youth mental health crisis. It's got to be programs and partnerships and collaboration and education and advocacy to change policies and increase reimbursement. So this is a huge undertaking. And that's why I just so appreciate to be able to stand in front of you today and to be able to share this initiative, because unless we all work together, including the business community, which we will be presenting to, we're not going to be successful. But how awesome would it be in 10 years from now that we can say Cincinnati led the way in bringing all of us together, all sectors, to really improve youth mental health and wellness in our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Dumas, you said you had something else.
Just one additional comment. I'm not sure who brought it up, but we talk about stigma and that you guys are dealing with stigma, and that the parents and the children know it's okay to be different. And at that point, shame, you can throw that out of the window, because a lot of young people and parents are being told, "What are you doing? Stop talking like that," or "Who are you talking?" And and all of that. So if we can just, as you guys are, deal with the stigma, and then they won't be afraid to come forth.
And I think in part what we have heard from youth is they're more comfortable talking about it.
To each other.
To your point is the parents who are not
yeah.
comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So the kids, I mean, my 15-year-old, her and her friends talk about anxiety. And unfortunately, last week, one freshman student at Summit took her life. And another student in another local high school here is hospitalized because she tried to take her life. That is 2 female high school students in our community last week who thought the world would be better off without them. And that's not okay. These are our kids and they're our future. And so I think an important point is that education is critical in this effort. Letting people know how to access resources, educating parents, and fighting the stigma for parents themselves.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I appreciate it. I'll throw out just a couple more, I guess, things as you're moving forward on it. And I appreciate, because like you said, just getting a roadmap kind of where we are. Also understanding that it's unfortunate, but life is super tough. And I mean, it's really tough, and it's getting tougher every day for parents to try to keep going, keep surviving. They obviously want better. Many of them want better for their children, and then there's some who don't have the best parents. You don't get to choose your parents when you come out. I always said, if you could, some babies would say, "Nah, I think I'm gonna pass on this one. I'll be back." So we have to make sure when they come here, they're not coming here on equal ground. Everybody doesn't start at the same place in the race, and it's kind of our job to try to level that playing field, which is really tough for a lot of people, and keep them keeping hope that they can make it out of the circumstances some of them are born into. So I just wanted to highlight that, because as we are becoming more sensitive, and we should be, the world is not becoming sensitive. And so we've got to, I was always prepared, and it's not fair, but it was just that, hey, they're not going to be fair to you, deal with it and try to, and that's a lot to tell a kid that it's not going to be fair for reasons that's beyond your own, circumstance. So just trying to have that balance, because otherwise I think we're going to have a crash course down, because eventually the youth will become the adults, and they will become the leaders, and they will be the ones trying to weather this storm. So just want to have a balance that, this is a very tough world, and how do we keep people feeling of hope? And, I come out of sports, you're going to lose a game, but how do you get back up at the same time without losing your mind and feeling like you could still go on? We lost a lot of people during COVID, and we're still losing people. There's a lot of people who are grieving, and they just say, move on. They're gone, and just get up and keep going. And it's not like that. You just can't get up and keep going. You lost somebody that was so important to you, and even though you are going, you might still be dealing with the grief. So there's so many things that I think we've come through it and keep going, but it was traumatic, and a lot of people not being able to have contact with their loved ones. It was a lot, and it just doesn't go away overnight. So all these things I know that we're dealing with. I just want to make sure too that sometimes when we say we're going to focus on something, that's kind of like where everybody goes, and it becomes that's the word of the day. It's affordable housing. Now everybody wants to do affordable housing because, we don't have enough money and we're not getting enough going. I just don't want this to become that. And instead of getting more resources or leveraging our resources better, I don't want to become a resource shift, because like you both said, it's the whole family. And we are seeing senior citizens taking their lives too. So I don't want to we go one way and then we forget, like you said, the wraparound of the whole family. And now we say, well, now we got to start a program for senior citizens and mental health. So just wanted to, as you're doing I'm sure you're already doing this, but as you're putting your plan together and all the components, understanding that, and then, how organizations are, they say, oh, they want youth. Now we got 500 groups gonna do youth health, because that's where the money is, and no money now for adults or senior citizens or parents or what have you. So I'm sure you mentioned that earlier, and I just wanted to highlight, I appreciate you all mentioning that you have to have the whole wraparound. Otherwise, we're just gonna be a seesaw going back and forth.
Absolutely. And I think you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think what we felt is that the sooner you address these problems, the better opportunity individuals have to become productive citizens in society and to live a healthier life. And so I think our thinking was move upstream, focus on the youth, and that's not to the detriment of all the adults and the elderly in our community who are suffering too. I think we just looked at it as a starting place because everybody cares about the kids and their future. And if we can get ahead of this and fix things for them and get them the care that they need, then they have more hope for their own future. And I just want to share with you that this gives me hope. The fact that 60 youth and families have come together and 25 youth fellows are committed to this, and over 100 organizations throughout our community, it gives me hope that this can be different. And believe me, I've seen a lot of initiatives where everybody comes to the table and everybody sets a strategy and we're all excited about it, and then the work doesn't happen. And this is going to be different. The work needs to happen, and we need to hold people accountable. And I just feel like this is different, and that gives me a lot of hope.
And no, I'm excited about it, and even the approach that you all have brought forward to us, because usually, like I said, we get it at the end of here it is. And I also appreciate you bringing up the issue of the reimbursables, because that could drive you over the edge too, in terms financially as well as mentally, because the need is there, but then you can't be reimbursed. Now you got stressed out, even if you do have a job, but now it's getting ready to, potentially bankrupt you. So I'm so glad that you all brought that component up, because everyone, at the state, I'm for mental health, Oh, we've got to get down to the nitty gritty, the cost and reimbursable. It's breaking a lot of families, and they're hesitant to get the help because they don't have like you said, they won't be able to, even people who have insurance, like you said, but you look at the cost and the reimbursements, the co-pays, all of that, it plays a major role. So I'm so glad that you're looking at this thing holistically.
And I'm grateful to the Board of County Commissioners for considering lobbying at the state to say we need to increase reimbursement. Because I think the more voices we have advocating for that, the more hope I have that things will change. Even if we have to take one dime at a time, I'll do it.
Well, you got an advocacy group here. Thank you all for bringing this. Okay, Commissioner Dubas.
So just very quickly, I just wanted to say, I think it was said earlier, we need something to do like up until 7 o'clock. And so the statistics prove that the youth violence between 3 and 7, when parents are still at work, increases. So as you go about trying to get money for activities during that time, the statistics are already there. You don't have to read them. That's when the violence takes place, the most youth violence. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it and look forward to continue to work with you and be back with more information how we move forward.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Okay, I'll make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 12122G3 to conduct a conference with an attorney and Section 12122G2 to discuss acquisition of property. Did I do that right, Michael?
Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse, Commissioner Summer Dumas.
Yes.